Thank you, Excellency, for joining us today. Mr. President, our session is really designed as a conversation, weaving together leadership and delivery, financing realities, global systems, and continental commitment. So without further ado, I'll dive into my first question. Africa's urban population is growing faster than infrastructure delivery, with cities expanding at over 3.5% annually. Under your leadership, Kenya has positioned housing at the center of its development agenda, recognizing as both a social and economic priority. In the next 2 to 3 months, your administration will have completed over 273,000 housing units, with another 500,000 planned for development, with over 640,000 direct jobs created. This is Africa's largest affordable housing program. Mr. President, this is bold leadership, and we would like to understand how you made this happen. What did it take to move housing from political commitment to a fully functioning economic system that delivers at scale? And what are some of the bottlenecks that you have had to intervene on to ensure affordable housing remains a national priority, Mr. President?
Thank you very much, Vivian. And welcome colleagues and friends from across our continent to Kenya. The conversation that you want to engage me in is a conversation that is very close to my heart. Affordable housing is not just about houses. It's about people. It's about dignity. It's about jobs. It's about careers. It is about business and much more. And you have asked me a fundamental question that how did we move this from manifesto, from documents, from ideas into reality? And I have only one answer. It takes leadership. That's it. And we have had this in our plans as a country in many administrations. We've had it in many manifestos. We've designed how it can be done. But until you find the leadership that has the courage to translate it into reality, it will remain aspiration, it will remain talk, it will remain documents, it will remain campaign promises. And one more thing, you cannot undertake such a fundamental and consequential undertaking if you are focusing on the next election. It has to take a longer-term focus in the next generation. That's what it takes. If you focus in the next election, you will not do it because it is difficult. It requires heavy political capital. It requires mobilizing resources, how to finance it. And that is why today, as I sit here, with 270,000 houses being built across the breadth of Kenya, in every large township in the Republic of Kenya, we have 200 active sites in every part of the Republic of Kenya. Yesterday, I was in one of our counties in Olkalau. The affordable housing in Olkalau is ready. In fact, we're going to hand over the keys. CS Alice Wahome has been with me. She has taken me to every place in Kenya because of affordable housing. So So let me just say this, that affordable housing will happen if you have the ultimate political leadership. It cannot be done at the ministry.
Yeah.
It cannot be done at another level. It has to take the political leadership at the highest level to drive it. Number two, you have to find ways of mobilizing resources. In Kenya, we decided that we are going to mobilize resources locally. The houses we have built in Kenya, maybe ministers sitting here, and I want to say this is a very important forum. We have close to 40 countries represented here at ministerial level, because housing is such an important topic for any government, because the world is urbanizing. You've just given us the statistics. We have 700 million people today in our continent living in urban settlements. For us in Kenya, we have 7 million people living in informal settlements. We have 1,140 odd informal settlements around the country. And in fact, strangely, a few years ago in Kenya, when visitors used to come to Kenya, I don't know how this happened, that we used to be proud of, okay, take this visitor to go and see the largest slum in our region. You know? So you take your visitor to go and see Kibera, the largest slum in our region, to go and see squalor and poverty and filth, and, you know, which is not the right thing to do. Not to deny that this exists. Yes, it does. But somebody has to do something about it. Today, I can proudly say, when these ministers leave these rooms, they will be taken to see how we are transforming those informal settlements into decent living houses for the people of Kenya. And the houses we have built, we have not borrowed money from the World Bank. We have not borrowed money from anywhere. We built these houses using our own resources. Wow. I bet you, today we have signed $4 billion of housing contracts. That is an equivalent of 650 billion Kenyan shillings. If I were to look for $4 billion from wherever, it would take me maybe 10 years of going to this town and the other town and seeing this person and the other person and signing this paper and signing another one. So I decided that we are going to have a conversation with the people of Kenya. And difficult conversation, that we have a situation, we need to fix it. And as was described by the governor of Nairobi, it wasn't an easy conversation, because change has a price. Unfortunately, status quo has also a price. And always, the price of change is lower than the price of status quo, ultimately. So we had a conversation, difficult, and I must thank our policymakers. When I went to the people of Kenya, I promised that we were going to undertake housing. And we were going to undertake housing because of 4 reasons. I explained myself to the people of Kenya. The people of Kenya trusted me with their vote. When I came to office, I asked my team that we had been elected with, that now it's time to implement what we promised the people of Kenya. And many members of parliament who are my friends told me, Mr. President, we cannot do this. This is difficult. This housing levy is difficult. But I told them, so are you telling me that we told the people of Kenya what we had no intention? In fact, I remember asking some of them who are my friends, I told them, when you had me on the platform telling the people of Kenya, we are going to build houses, their children are going to get jobs, we're going to move them away from slums, what was going on in your mind? How did you think that we are going to do this? And I want to thank our parliamentary group that when I explained to them that this was not something we were going to bargain with, they agreed with me. They passed the necessary legislation. We went through difficult times, but today we can proudly say as a people and as a nation that we are doing some of the most consequential things. And this is very emotional. Why? You haven't seen the kind of impact that this has on real people. When I went to move the first batch of people who are living in a slum, right here in Nairobi called Mukuru, a place where there is no toilet, a place where there is no road, there is no water, there is no electricity. For you to use the toilet, you have to pay. For them to move from that state to 10th floor of a building that has water, that has piped gas, that has electricity, that has a lift, that has a playground, that has a school, that has a hospital, that has street lighting. You don't know the kind of impact you make to those kind of people. So, this is not just about houses. As I told you, it's about people's careers. In January this year, we brought on board about 6,000 interns. You know, apart from 600,000 people working, who were not working 3 years ago. Architects, engineers, plumbers, quantity surveyors, carpenters, a whole array, realtors, painters, people who have gone to college. We're talking about graduates from our technical training colleges, certificate, people who have a certificate in electrical, in being an electrician, people who have degrees in architecture. These are real people with real careers to pursue. Today they have a chance to pursue their careers. Today, because of the housing program, we have industries that have come on stream. We have people who have been Juakali artisans, small enterprises. Today they are transitioning from being ad hoc. You know, you make one window today, you make another window after 2 months, you make another window after 10 months. Today they have contracts. In fact, we ring-fenced close to 15 billion Kenya shillings for people who were informal. Today, we are formalizing their business. We've had more steel companies come on stream. We've had more cement factories come on board. We've had many more people coming on stream in the space around making construction equipment, making inquiries in transport industry. More transporters are coming on board. So we have built a whole construction industry around housing. What is more, we are slowly rolling back land fragmentation. We are slowly influencing land that was meant for agricultural activity. We are now reserving it for agricultural productivity and food security instead of it being subdivided for informal settlement. So it hasn't taken a person, it has taken a whole Kenyan society, because the executive has been in, Alice and myself and the team. People in the legislature have done their part. The people of Kenya are the biggest contributors to this success. Why? Because they put in their taxes. And we are making the change together. Yeah. And that is why I am very proud to address this audience and to share our experience as a nation, which I believe is what other countries are doing. Maybe they are doing it differently, but we can share in this experience. Finally, you've asked me, what are the challenges?
Yes.
The challenges have been, the change. Changing a situation is not an easy thing. Mm-hmm. So we've had political pushback. We still have politicians who still think you can make populist, we are going to stop this housing because we are protecting the pay slips of people. Such pedestrian talk. Mm-hmm. How do you cannot see the 640,000 people working. You don't know what to do with them. I know many ministers here are wondering whether there are still people who are opposing this in Kenya. Yes, they are there, and they are not few. There are many. Many politicians still climb to podia to talk about how they want to stop this. How you want to stop such transformation is mind-boggling. Right? Mm-hmm. We still have courts. We've gone through difficult challenges in courts. People who go to court, they want to stop this. In fact, many of them are asking me, who told you we need houses? Others are saying, why are you taking government land, building houses, and then giving it to individuals? The same people don't mind if the same government land, people invade, they settle, it becomes an informal settlement. They don't mind it. But they mind it if we use it and build affordable housing, make decent use of it. Then you ask yourself, those are the kind of challenges we have to deal with. They look mundane, they don't look very intelligent, but they are there. And we have to confront them every day. Sometimes they come from people who you think should know more, I remember telling one of my friends who was opposed to this housing, and I was asking them, my friend, in your house, you possibly have 3 or 4 toilets. One in your bedroom, one somewhere, another one somewhere. There are people who don't have a toilet. They have to pay to use a toilet. That is the conversation we're having. It is as basic as that. So if you don't see the value of a social house or an affordable house, there are people who desperately need it, because at the very least, they need a toilet of their own. That's how basic it is. And finally, let me say this. It is about dignity, giving people dignity. It is about getting another group of people to own something. Today, in a social house, for as less as $30 a month, you become a homeowner. That would not happen under any other circumstance. It would not happen. If we left this to the private sector, the private sector builds for those who can afford, not those who need. Government must think about the people who need the houses. And that is why policy becomes central to the delivery of housing. Sorry, I've taken long.
No, Mr. President, this is fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from His Excellency. This is bold, transformative, and courageous leadership in practice. Mr. President, thank you for bringing the human face to the affordable housing agenda. It's very important for us to see it's not just about housing, as you've said, but it's about dignity, and it's about the people. Mr. President, we have other leaders in the audience that would like to also bring into this conversation and hear from them. My first question I'd like to pose to Her Excellency Anna Claudia Rosbach, UN Under-Secretary General and Executive Director of UN Habitat. Madam Executive Director, when you talk about the future of Africa,